Webinar, Recruitment, Attracting Successful VISTAs. I'm Amy Kanata with Education Northwest in Portland, Oregon, and I'll be the host for your webinar today. We have a wonderful team supporting this webinar, and to start, I want to introduce Eric Powell from the Corporation for National and Community Service. Go ahead, Eric.
Thank you, Amy, and welcome to all the supervisors on the phone. If you are a veteran supervisor and have been to our previous webinars, thank you for coming back. If you are new to this webinar series, welcome. We're excited to have you. Today's webinar was one in many of a monthly series that we're putting together, specifically designed to help supervisors in their very important and very special role as VISTA supervisors. So we look forward from the Corporation for National and Community Service and the AmeriCorps VISTA program to working with you each and every month on topics that are important and relevant to you. Today's topic was put together because recruitment is one of the biggest topics discussed right now. So I say that, and I'll pass it back to Amy to get us started.
Thank you, Eric. So you've already heard from Eric and myself. We also have Lois Morgan, another colleague of ours from Bank Street College in New York City, and Lois will be facilitating the Q&A and chat. And then we also have Indy Clark here with me in Portland who is doing tech support. So thank you everyone who's working on the session today. We're delighted to have two guest speakers with us today. Many of you know Jen Lin Wu. She's an independent consultant and facilitator who works out of Seattle, Washington. Jen is the VISTA Regional Team Leader for the Pacific Cluster PSO and Supervisor Orientation events. Jen served as a VISTA in the late 60s and since then has supervised VISTAs as well as VISTA supervisors. She helped develop VISTA training curriculum and provided training and technical assistance to a variety of other Corporation for National and Community Service programs. So we want to welcome Jen. We also have Tracy Johnson. Tracy is a recruitment, marketing, and outreach specialist at the Corporation for National and Community Service. And Tracy was first introduced to national service as an AmeriCorps VISTA member with Teach for America. So please welcome our wonderful guest speakers. So here is our plan for today. As you know, VISTA recruitment is a big topic, and we will only be focusing on a few aspects of recruitment today. The VISTA campus has a variety of resources for recruiting VISTAs, and we plan to showcase a few of those resources today, but we encourage you to go check out the campus if you have not yet. There's a wonderful section for supervisors. You can also continue the conversations that will start today with your colleagues on the supervisor forums area of the VISTA campus. So without further delay, let's go ahead and get started. So let's imagine that you have two top candidates for your program, and your program is seeking a VISTA who can build partnerships, recruit volunteers, and develop programming for homeless families in your area. I want you to consider these two applicants. First, we have John. He's a local retired veteran who's been instrumental in building his church's volunteer program. He's not a college graduate, but he brings a vast amount of life experience and local connections. We also have April, and April's just about to graduate with a bachelor's degree in sociology and is focused on social justice. She's completed an internship at a local women's shelter during college, but she has no paid work experience. She will need to relocate to your community to serve. So the question is, for the chat panel, who would you be inclined to choose, John or April, and why? Who would you choose, John, our retired veteran who's local with lots of community connections, or April, who's just about to graduate with no actual paid work experience, and she would need to relocate to your community? Who would you be inclined to choose and why? Go ahead and enter your ideas into the chat panel for me.
Okay, someone would choose John because he has roots in the community. I see a lot of people picking John. And then we have someone who chose April. More flexibility in her schedule. Either one could add value with the right training and support. Good point. Someone here says April might have a fresh perspective. Okay, we're back and forth. Somebody points out that it would really depend on the position. That's a good point as well. Either has pros and cons. Yes? So we have pretty much an even split so far. Okay, we still have an even split. Someone's focusing on the writing skills of April because she graduated school. John being more familiar with the immediate area and the community.
Thanks, Lois. So yeah, as you can see, it's not always an easy decision, and it looks like we're all applying different criteria depending on who we are. And of course, there's more information we would need to be able to make an actual decision. So the first half of today's session, we wanted to get you thinking about this. The first half of today's session is about personal competencies that VISTAs need to succeed. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of the personal competencies that you want to consider when recruiting candidates. The Corporation for National and Community Service commissioned a study to understand and identify the knowledge, skills, and attitudes that individuals need to successfully complete their VADs. The initial model was drafted by a team of workplace competency experts and a working group of VISTA host sites, supervisors, and members. So they identified a variety of different competencies that VISTAs need to succeed. And here's a list of the personal effectiveness competencies. So members are expected really to have these when they arrive at their service site, but in reality, they don't always have the personal effectiveness competencies that they may need to succeed. So let's go ahead and dig a little deeper into this topic and learn about some strategies that you can use to identify personal effectiveness competencies through your recruitment process. So here's a list of the top 5 competencies that are critical. So VISTAs reported that they use these most often during their service year. So the majority working independently, taking personal responsibility, communication and listening, and then the 5th, ambition. So this might be a good first pass at a list that you want to focus on. So here's a detailed list of each of the different categories for the 7 personal effectiveness competencies. You don't have to write this down. I'll make sure that we post this with the recording so that you can see the full list. But let's think about how these apply at our sites. So how do these 7 apply at our sites? And what I would like you to do is use the chat panel to tell me, do certain competencies stand out for you? From this list, do certain personal effectiveness competencies stand out for you? And if they do, why? Go ahead and enter your thoughts into the chat panel. Do certain competencies stand out for you and why?
Cultural competency, initiative and personal responsibility from Kelly. Madeline says interpersonal skills, being able to work with a team of people is important. Cheryl says initiative, ability to work independently and set goals. Another person, willingness to learn, that is critical. Personal responsibility, initiative, Another person with interpersonal skills and adaptability and flexibility. That's a key. Flexibility is very important. Abigail says that stands out for her as well. Adaptability, a lot of the same ones are being repeated. These are really critically important at almost all your sites. Another willingness to learn, personal responsibility. So these seem to be resonating. I like the one that Lisa
said, if they're willing to learn, if they're willing to try it.
Yes. Yeah, repeatedly. Initiative, adaptability, flexibility, these are getting repeated again and again, and these are all really critical skills that VISTAs need to bring with them.
Thank you, Lois, and thank you everyone for adding your ideas into the chat panel. So let's go ahead and turn it over to Jen, and Jen's going to talk about some strategies that you can use to learn about personal effectiveness competencies through your recruitment efforts. So go ahead and take it away, Jen.
Thank you. And greetings from a sometimes sunny Seattle, everyone. I'm happy to be joining with you on this call. What I do really appreciate is the fact that we have an opportunity to kind of put into our lens what we should keep our focus on. So oftentimes I get sidetracked to think about the VAD and the knowledge and skills that are needed to drive that VAD. But I know from experience it's equally important to really understand and seek out those soft skills, those qualities and habits that will make for effective relationship building, problem solving, and communication. So the many projects that we work with, we're definitely looking for VISTA candidates who are teamers, who are culturally sensitive and aware, they're self-starters, they're great at conflict resolution, and that they have a strong work ethic. In order to kind of mine and screen for that, we try to really work all of the connection points that we have with member candidates. So what I can tell you is from the application process and the material submission, we're reviewing that with an eye to look at communication abilities, initiative that is shown, the appropriateness of the things that are shared, and just their ability to research and learn about our project. Additionally, we take the interview questions set really seriously and embed in them several questions related to their ability to team with others and also their experience, past experience with conflict resolution, their role in it, the things that they learned, and how they were able to affect win-wins. So the interview questions are another place where we rally our skills to kind of get good information to make good decision making. The other thing is that we definitely look at the volunteer's prior experience, whether that be work or volunteering, and in looking at diverse populations that he or she has already worked with, sought out, placements that they really care about. And then the personal references really help us get a sense of the work ethic and whether or not this person has forged strong relationships with supervisors prior to this, and what are people saying about that. If we turn to the next slide, I also want to talk about the ambition, adaptability, and willingness to learn. I concur with everyone on the call. I think all of these qualities are really important. And so we're looking for motivated, flexible member candidates who are open to learning. Where in the past I talked about the ways that you could gather information to make an informed choice, we also try to definitely share information so that all parties are making an informed decision. So the member is getting as much information about our realities, our expectations, our needs, our culture, so that they can also either select in or select out. So some of the examples that I want to share with you is that we have a website that broadcasts information. We use brochures. We have print materials. Some of our projects use their Facebook to communicate information. And some have developed 15-minute videos that are kind of FAQs, answering every question that you might have, so that the member, as he or she is reviewing that material, is also helping us make a good selection and a good match. Because as they get to know our organization, they may decide, well, what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing in terms of the community isn't quite the fit that I'm thinking of. The rhythm is different. The expectations around how much engagement is required of me, or the distances I might travel or need to travel are more than what I was thinking about. So there's not only gathering information, but imparting information. And I think I really, really want to emphasize the whole idea about the continuous learning, and that we need to seed within our connections or contacts with the member just our philosophy around it's an ongoing learning process. We're expecting that together we're going to learn, and that we're all teachers and learners. So those are some of the things that we do in our projects to talk about personal effectiveness competencies. So back to you, Amy.
Thanks, Jen. So in summary, here are a couple ways that you can learn about the personal effectiveness competencies through your process. So the first one, behavior. How do they respond during the application period? Do they respond to your requests in a timely manner? Do they keep in touch? Do they provide the needed documentation? And again, are they just generally engaged in the process? What's the quality of the materials that they're submitting? Are they organized? Are they high quality? Can you judge their writing skills from those materials? Does that give you an idea of how they may portray themselves in your community? How do they respond to your interview questions? Have they done their background homework when they show up for the interview? Are they providing good, thoughtful examples, or are they just kind of giving you canned responses? And then do they ask thoughtful questions of you when it's their chance to ask questions? Looking at work and volunteer history, what is their work history like? What's their volunteer history like? What do their references from those two sources say about them? Those are all insights into their personal effectiveness competencies. And as Jen said, personal references may be one of the best ways that you can get information from people. So be sure that you ask specific questions, and you may want to align those somewhat with the competencies that you're looking for in your VISTA candidates. So let's go back to John and April and reconsider these two applicants and see if anybody's changed their mind a little bit. So now that you've learned about the personal effectiveness competencies, what else would you want to know in order to choose your finalist? Now that you know about the personal effectiveness competencies, what else would you like to know to choose your finalist? And you can just think about this. You can put it in the chat if you want. I just want you to, consider, would you maybe apply different criteria now that you've seen this list? So past experience and education are only part of the picture for each candidate. Getting candidates with a high number of personal effectiveness competencies in the door is crucial for success. So many of the VAD-related tasks can be taught, but VISTAs must show up with the ability to work independently, listen carefully, and have the ambition to really stick with it throughout the year. So we want you to keep these competencies in mind when you think about who you're going to reach out to. Also, targeting a broad range of candidates can pay off. So the characteristics and past experience of your most effective VISTAs may surprise you. So we just encourage you to keep an open mind and think about who you're looking for and target your messages to those people. So next, we're going to talk about the recruitment process cycle and some tools to streamline the process. So now we're going to talk about the stages of the VISTA recruitment process, and the graphic that you see here was adapted from a graphic developed by a group of VISTA leaders for a VISTA, it was a project called VISTA Recruitment Action Learning Challenge. And the Action Learning Challenge is an opportunity for VISTA leaders to practice leadership skills in the context of real-world projects, while at the same time enhancing the experience of current and future VISTAs and leaders. So what they did is they created a set of tools and resources for recruitment based on their own experience and also with input from the field. This is also a good place, just looking at this graphic, to acknowledge that we have a variety of approaches for recruitment depending on your role. So for example, we have intermediaries, we have single site supervisors, we have sub-site supervisors who work with an intermediary, And all of these different folks may be involved with recruitment in a variety of ways depending on your project. So for example, sometimes intermediaries recruit directly for their sub-sites, and sometimes the sites recruit their members on their own. And sometimes it's a hybrid model with different people being involved at different points in the process. So it's important that if you are working with a larger organization, that everybody knows their roles in the recruitment process and how things are supposed to flow. On top of the varying roles, we also know that time frames for recruitment often shift. The Action Learning team thought about this and addressed some of those shifts in the tools that they created that we'll talk about in detail in just a second. So just look at this graphic and notice that it's a cycle versus a continuum. And that's because recruitment's an ongoing process. So once you have your member on board, it's time to refine your process and start planning for your next cycle, since we have multi-year grants. So now I'm going to transition to Jen, who's going to share some tips and strategies for various points in the recruitment process. Go ahead, Jen.
Thanks, Amy. I think first, just breathe. You know, the cycle just keeps kind of spinning, and I think it takes a little while. There's a definite learning curve. But if I were going to offer up some tips, I think one is to plan with the end in mind. You know, just definitely work backwards, and we actually have a wonderful tool that the leaders help develop that help allow us to use technology to help manage time, because I think that it can run away from us, and the more that you use the tools and samples that we have showcased in this particular webinar, I think the happier you'll be. In terms of, so I have used extensively the templates that are available, and I'll showcase the Siena College candidate tracking database template, and also the pre-screening form. You know, you can think it, but it's so great to be able to take someone else's work and modify it for your use and really learn from that. But that has saved us a tremendous amount of time by just looking at what's available on the campus, and also through the supervisors' training, and help us construct a set of behavioral questions to help us to create a database. So I think that definitely borrow. I think the other idea that we have related to the whole recruitment stages and techniques is we definitely engage our partners throughout the stages. And the more that we can build strong partnerships, the clearer our local sites are about what a VISTA placement is all about, and we're able to get the right message out to the right people, so that we're not inviting in all this gray area, but instead we're all kind of clear together, and therefore it just makes for a much more successful recruiting process. Andy, could you move on to the next, good, thank you, the next slide. What I wanted to just end with is that oftentimes it's amazing to us that we find that some of the member candidates forget about that it's a VISTA-specific placement. And so we want to definitely, during our interview, revisit that conversation, that the focus is capacity building, that it is a 24/7 commitment, and that the living allowance requires quite a bit of skill and preparation to live that life effectively. And so when we can, we just try to bring it back to the world of VISTA, so that the member candidate is making some clear decisions and making really informed decisions. In terms of matches, I want to end with that, is that you still have some opportunities to make the best match possible. And the way we do that, because we have a number of project sites, is that we engage the direct supervisor in the conversation. And so when we can, it happens in person. When it doesn't happen at an orientation, it can still happen at a distance. And we ask member candidates and supervisors for their input into what might be their top 3 placements, so that as much as possible, people are helping us to make the decision. Back to you, Amy.
Thanks, Jen. And when you mentioned the living allowance, it made me think of, we ran this webinar in January with some different practitioners, and they mentioned that they have their applicants complete a budget to show them how they're going to live on the living allowance for their year of service. So I thought that was a very simple but helpful piece in the process that others may want to adopt as well.
Thank you.
So let's go ahead and talk a little more about tools, and this is going to be a chance for you to dream and tell us what's on your recruitment tool wish list. If you could have any tool in the world to help you with recruitment, what would that tool be? And so Indy's going to pull up a whiteboard, and this is our chance to type on the board. And so what you can do is you can grab the T tool here at the top. You just click on that, and then you can click anywhere on the page and respond to our question. What is on your recruitment tool wish list? If you could have any tool, what would it be? So an example may be a calendar that helps keep your team on track. It might be a set of wonderful interview questions. Perhaps it's a sample posting for a social media outlet like LinkedIn. We have one of those from our last session. Someone wants time. Interview questions.
Someone wants a dry run.
Access to, I see.
Yeah, access to college, university job portals. Postcards. What do you mean by postcards? Postcards that show what?
I'm also seeing a few ideas come into the chat panel. Jacqueline was saying access to their resume. Thomas was reflecting on the VISTA My AmeriCorps portal.
Someone has suggested a Skype to interview long distance. A 2-minute recruitment video. Any other?
Great.
A time machine. That's wouldn't we all like that? List of good questions.
Great, thank you, Lois, and thank you everyone for typing in your ideas. There's a lot of good ideas here. A VISTA headhunter, I like that one. Someone to help you find VISTAs, and everybody hopes and dreams for a nice big candidate pool from which to have all the choice in the world, right? So these are a lot of really good ideas. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of the tools that the Action Learning team put together and see if maybe we can make some of your dreams come true, at least a couple of you. So I wanted to showcase a few of the tools that the Action Learning team created in their toolkit. And the first one I want to talk about is this one. It's called the In a Snap Recruitment Guide. And as we know, since recruitment is a process, it ideally takes about 4 months of preparation prior to the start of a VISTA member service term. However, the ideal process is not always going to happen, right? There's always a possibility of surprises coming up, budgetary changes, or external things that happen that mean that you have to speed up your recruitment process. And so this guide, called the In a Snap Recruitment Guide, gives you some insights on how you can get a member much more quickly than the sort of average 4-month time period. So this is one of the tools available to you from the Action Learning team. Another one is the AmeriCorps Vista applicant tracking tool. And this one's pretty exciting to me, I think. It helps you stay organized. It allows you to monitor all the necessary steps in the process and also record applicant information throughout the recruitment process. So it's a spreadsheet. It was designed really with multiple recruiters in mind, so you could use it in a shared way, maybe through Google Drive or Dropbox or on your organization's shared folder. So if you have multiple people who are working on recruitment, you can enter all of your information for those applicants in this one tool to track their first phone call, to track when they get paperwork in, to track when their interview happens. So it is a nice way to really track everything that's going on with your candidates. The third one is a VISTA member recruitment calendar, and this is another customizable spreadsheet that you can use at your sites. It's wonderful because they have already put in the formulas in the timeline, and so you just put in your dates and it populates everything, and basically it works backwards from the PSO date and from the VISTA service term start date. So it allows you to really generate a timeline pretty quickly for your recruitment efforts without having to reinvent the wheel. So I think we all love to have tools to start with versus having to build them on our own. To learn from people that have come before us, I think, is really helpful. And then also in the toolkit that the Action Learning team created, there is a frequently asked questions document, and it contains a wealth of information, just sort of some insider information on recruitment from these leaders that have been doing this over the past year or so. And it includes answers to questions like, I only have 1 month to recruit and fill my VISTA position. What do I do? What are some effective outreach avenues for where I should post? It also includes some ideas from what are some key questions that I should use to screen applicants. So I encourage you to take a look at all of these resources. They are currently available on the supervisor webinar page under Webinars on Demand for the webinar called Recruitment. So again, we ran this webinar in January, so the tools are already up there. You can take a look at them at any point. I will also make sure to add any additional tools that we talk about today to those lists. So now that we have an idea of some tools that are available, there's more than this up on the campus, but these are the ones we wanted to highlight today. Let's go ahead and shift gears a little bit and hear from Tracy, who's going to talk about marketing tools and materials that are available for you from VISTA. Take it away, Tracy.
Thank you, Amy. So let me just start with a recent experience I had in the airport. I was wearing my AmeriCorps Vista pin, the same one that you see featured here. And as always, I seem to have to get special checks from the TSA people. So I was already prepared for that. And while I was getting further checks, the girl who was helping me noticed the lapel pin. And so then it sparked a conversation where she said, well, you know, I served with AmeriCorps. And then I talked to her about my experience, and what was supposed to be just a quick 1-minute scan to make sure that I wasn't violating any security measures turned into a great 10 to 15-minute conversation. Great for me, maybe not so much for the people behind me in line. That being said, it really made me think about the fact that, you know, part of recruitment is the brand recognition and the stories that come behind a brand. And so what I want to emphasize today are the ways that you can co-brand AmeriCorps Vista on your resources that you are using to recruit, and kind of benefit from the stories of past VISTAs, as well as what the brand signifies to those who may not be as familiar with what a VISTA position entails, but have a general idea about AmeriCorps and what AmeriCorps members are doing across the country. So here is an example of one of the sites that I recently saw that I thought many organizations could learn some techniques from. If you look on the left-hand screen, you see FIRST, who has an AmeriCorps VISTA program and a relatively new VISTA program. So if you aren't already doing what I'm going to mention, don't feel as though you're behind. This was recently put up within the last year or two. As you'll notice, what they do is they use the AmeriCorps logo, and beside it they give sort of a brief description about what they're trying to achieve through the AmeriCorps VISTA program with their organization. But more importantly, what they do is use current members to explain what the program is in their own words, and that's what the video highlights. I thought this was a great way to allow the VISTA members to tell the story of what future members would be learning. If you're a newer program, you can still use people from your organization to tell stories about what you're doing to help people and how VISTA members can be part of that team. But again, it gives a personal perspective on what a recruit could imagine or envision themselves doing, which I know if you're using the portal as your sole mean of trying to attract members, you don't get to have as many words to describe different things. So having us co-branded on your organization's website is a great way to tell the AmeriCorps VISTA story, not just in a short amount of words, but from the perspective of members or people within the organization that may be working there or may benefit from the program. And then on the right-hand side, as you may notice, we have various ways that we speak about AmeriCorps VISTA, but I like this sort of boilerplate language to give to organizations because I think it's pretty concise. It doesn't take up a lot of space, but also it really gives an overall picture about what national service is and the various ways that people can get involved in national service. We also have, besides co-branding on your website, we have various materials that are available to organizations that you may not be aware of. So the first couple of links are on national service gear. The first link has various things that you can order that are free, and the second link links to gear that you may want to have previous members in. Those things are paid, but there are a lot of things that are already free that you can utilize, from posters to brochures, stickers, bookmarks. I mean, we have tons of stuff, and we're always creating new collateral. So if you've already been on the site, I do advise you to go back to it periodically, because we're constantly changing the inventory and trying to come up with new things based on needs that may not have been met with our previous materials. We also have similar resources on the VISTA campus, as you'll see from that third link, that are available for download. So let's say you think, oh gosh, I wanted to have some posters to a recruitment fair that I'm going to, and you don't have time for them to be shipped to you. Well, you can download them immediately from the VISTA campus and have various sizes available too for print. So that's another resource that if you're not taking advantage of, I very much encourage you to do so. We also have various marketing materials available on nationalservice.gov, and that includes fact sheets about what AmeriCorps VISTA is, the latest statistics from the previous year. We have logos for download, so if you are going to take advantage of doing something similar to what I presented from FIRST organization and you want to include us or co-brand us on your website, we have all of the logos available for you. We have a lot of materials actually and various information on how you can most effectively use those materials. And then lastly, at the bottom you see I have all of the social media sites that we are currently involved in. We are going to be adding Instagram soon, so that's something exciting to look forward to. But we very much encourage people to connect with us because we're always looking for stories to highlight and showcase, and we enjoy retweeting and liking and helping to promote things when organizations say they need various assistance. As if you're into social media, you know that It works as a network, and amplifying messages is the best way to get information out to a larger group of people. But unless you're connected with us and highlighting those things for us through our social media networks, then we may not see that you need assistance in doing something. So we're always happy to help promote things when individuals or organizations reach out to us via social media. Thank you, Amy.
Thank you, Tracy, and a lot of great resources available. I encourage folks to access those. Let's go ahead and talk about some challenges and solutions that you guys want to talk about. We spent a good amount of time sort of looking at the personal effectiveness competencies and some tools. So now you have a chance to brainstorm with each other and use the chat panel to put your questions, and I see people are already doing that. And also to post questions for the presenters. So feel free to use the Q&A feature to post your questions, and we'll go ahead and run down the list of questions. We also want to acknowledge that we got a lot of great questions from you all when you signed up via the registration form, and so we'll try to weave some of those ideas in as well. And it looks like James posted a question that some folks have already responded to, but he was saying that his organization has a problem with selected candidates basically dropping out after they've been selected, which causes delays and headaches and can delay them getting their VISTA member for several months. I see that Judy responded to that, saying that that can be unavoidable, and gave a tip to have at least 1 or 2 additional qualified applicants sort of in the hopper, so to speak, for last-minute changes. So that's a great tip. Any other, from our panelists, any other thoughts around how you can avoid or keep folks engaged so that they don't drop out between the time that they've been selected and when they actually begin service? Anyone else want to weigh in on that?
I'd like to, Amy. This is Jen. I think that I would ask James to look at the specific situations and try to identify, so what was the issue? Is it organizational culture? Is it the living allowance? Whatever it is, then I would front load the whole experience with upfront information. So for example, I would definitely have a behavioral question that included their experience with follow-through on a difficult project. I would also impart information about the service climate and explain that in the past many people have come forward and made promises that they couldn't keep, and that the climate of the organization and the community is that it just really can't tolerate, you know, folks stepping up and saying one thing and not being able to follow through. So could they share from their experience when they've struggled and made sure to follow through? So I would definitely share information and also try to understand what is the issue and bring information right up front so that they're grounded in that information before they make a decision.
Thank you, Jen. I noticed, Cheryl, here's one that I think maybe a lot of us have experienced in jobs and with service. Has anyone ever interviewed someone that was awesome, but then when they started it was a very different experience? And I see some ideas coming in, but does anyone want to respond to that piece around the interview's great, but then when they get there it's a different experience? How can we maybe adapt what we're doing or add some different processes to try to avoid that? Any ideas from our panelists?
I think team interviews help. You know, when you're already having multiple people weigh in, it just sometimes it does happen. It's just you know, something that happens. But I think when you have included more lenses and more eyes and more ears, it works even better.
Thanks, Jen. And I also thought that when we were talking about reference checks, how important reference checks are from their past work or volunteer experience, or even just personal references, right? You can really, people aren't always completely forthcoming, but sometimes you can sort of get an idea of what they're saying or what maybe they're not saying about that particular person as well. And then I know many of our sites do multiple interviews, so they may have just a quick 10-minute interview to see if it's a good fit, and then later they'll do a longer, more in-depth interview. And so I think those multiple points of contact can be really great to get to know someone. Great, and I'm seeing, check out the chat panel when you guys get a chance, because I think there's some great advice in there. It looks like Kelly has a question in the Q&A panel. We've had a few past interns express interest in the program, but they're worried about the additional payments they will now have due to school loan repayments. Is there a forbearance period for VISTA members? Eric, is this something that you can answer?
Absolutely. Thank you, Amy. So it's a long answer, but I'll try to make it short. For AmeriCorps VISTA members who choose to receive the Education Award at the end of their year of service, they're allowed to put their federal loans into forbearance, which means they don't have to pay on their student loans while they're serving. And the National Service Trust, which is part of the Corporation for National and Community Service, will pay off all the interest that they accrue during their year of service. So it's really, really a good benefit. If members choose the cash stipend as their end of service benefit, then they can only put their private loans into deferment, but that's up to the private lender. So yes, there's a lot more nuances to it, but it is a great benefit that forbearance does help a lot of VISTAs so that they're not required to pay on their loans while they're serving during their year.
Thanks, Eric. And I just want to say that understanding the terms and conditions and also the benefits of service and really being able to explain those to your applicants is very important. And you can find that information on the VISTA campus, and that's vistacampus.gov if you've not visited the campus before. And again, there's lots of great information that you can share with people to be transparent about both the terms, the conditions, and then also the benefits of serving up front so that you know you're getting people in the door that understand what VISTA is all about. Lois, do we have other questions in either the chat panel or Q&A panel that we haven't answered yet?
There's one from Madeline. Do you have local universities or community colleges? And this is a question, working with faculty there could be helpful to recruit recent grads. This is really a response to a previous comment in the chat. There are no more questions in the Q&A, but there were a couple of questions that came up in the registration data that we collected that haven't been raised here that I might want to bring up. And one person had an issue with the period of time between when a VISTA made a commitment and when the actual VISTA job started, and that how do you maintain and increase interest during that period, that there was a gap that seemed to present some problems. And I wondered if anyone, Jen or anyone else on the panel, had some ideas for that.
Just off the top, it is kind of tricky. You need to maintain sort of constant contact, sending information about community stakeholders and partners, information to help them get up to speed. I think that it can happen where a person can sort of stray away if you don't already get them involved and engaged, and possibly even giving a small assignment before getting on site if there's quite a bit of time between their nomination and actually arriving on site. But I have heard other projects talk about that can be, other things happen, life happens.
Right. A couple of people also brought up the issue in the registration about recruiting in rural areas, that there seems to be a problem there in the sense that it's harder to get the marketing out there and a lot fewer applicants. Any strategies specifically for dealing with rural areas and recruitment in rural areas? Jen, might you have some ideas on that?
I think that actually, I have met many members member candidates who are interested in serving in a location that's very, very different than what their experience prior to then have. So I would both push that here's an opportunity to serve, in a rural area and describe that area. And then I think I'd also connect around the issue area, that many people will travel great distances to just connect with a project that is forming in a needed area, and also just to tell your story about your program and what you're trying to accomplish. I think the more that I have a picture in my head of a need and the location of that place, that I can make a good decision. I mean, I've met many, many VISTAs whose actual need is to experience something very different than what they're used to. So but also I think another idea is it is really challenging when we're just resource strapped. But I try to identify local champions, local informal and formal leaders to help work their networks so that we can, as best as possible, get the word out. Hope that's some tips that are helpful.
Thank you, Jen. Go ahead, Lois.
Yeah, there were also a couple of questions about finding ways to gauge personality and commitment during the upfront process, when you're assessing candidates. And I think that hopefully with some of the strategies that we've identified in terms of personal competencies, you will be more aware of how you might be able to assess some of those qualities. Because a number of you also mentioned that you've had VISTAs who have left before the end of the year, and these are all tied together, trying to assess those who might have more initiative and more ability to be flexible and adaptable to the changing needs during the VISTA year. Any other questions?
Yeah, Lois, so I noticed that we have another one from Lindsay in the Q&A panel, and her question is, the location of our VISTA opportunity is centered between two large cities. The person recruited may likely have to commute or be interested in moving to a smaller mid-sized community. Any suggestions for recruiting? Any suggestions for Lindsay for her dilemma here, being centered between two large cities?
Well, this is Eric. I know on one of our webinars, one of the supervisors had a really good idea instead of, especially whether it comes to rural recruiting or in this case, kind of straddling between two communities. One idea was to really talk about the exciting and positive qualities of serving in either community or in the community where your organization is, so that if the VISTA does have to choose between one or the other, or if it's a question of commuting to one versus relocating and serving closer to another, really highlighting the aspects of your community and kind of trying to look at it almost like a destination travel, except it's a destination service where the person's actually going to really enjoy what they're doing and have an exciting year.
I see that someone put in too that it's helpful when you can help them find free or low-cost local housing opportunities. I also wonder if maybe you have a great candidate right in your own backyard, in your local community perhaps, or you can work out some sort of carpool situation with someone else who lives in the city that they live in when they'll be commuting to your site. Those all seem like potential ideas.
I also think that a really significant untapped resource is VISTA Alumni. I mean, we all know that, the best recruiting happens word of mouth. And I think that if we can find out from the state office or with the help of the state office who in the area has already been serving, that we should really rally those alum to help us get the word out and help us be, the frontline recruiters, because they know what service is about and they can speak of it with great passion. So I think that I would also talk about the transportation and the distances and what things we've done to think about bridging that. If it is potentially a challenge, what are some opportunities and ways of looking at it, and things that we've already considered to help the VISTA who's placed in between possibly two major cities, and what an adventure this could be, and to really, as Eric has mentioned, to really pump up, like, why would this be such a great opportunity, even though it might seemingly sound initially like a challenge.
I see a comment here that really addresses the situation where there's a gap between when they are committed and when the actual VISTA position starts. This person says, I start their orientation in advance by linking them to organizational events and persons that can help, that they can begin to contact and connect with. That sounds like a great way to get them involved even before they are officially involved.
Thank you, everyone. Any other questions or challenges that you want to put out to the panel? Please go ahead and put those in the chat or the Q&A. Okay, so folks may still be formulating those questions. I'm going to go ahead, since we're close to the end of the hour, just do our wrap-up. And if you have additional questions, we're happy to stay on the line for about 10 more minutes if there's additional questions. So I want to thank you all for being here. It's been great to hear your ideas and to see you sharing with each other, as well as hearing from our guest speakers. As far as next steps, I will work on the session recording, so this session will be posted soon to the Webinars for Supervisors page on the VISTA campus, and we'll send a follow-up email to all of you to let you know when those materials are posted. If you want to look at the Action Learning Team Toolkit now, again, it's also posted on that page from our January webinar, so you can go and find it on Webinars for Supervisors page at vistacampus.gov. And I will post that link for you right now, just so you have it fresh. One other housekeeping item, you can sign up for our next webinar on that page. You'll see the link in the chat. And that will be June 17th, and we will be talking about preparing for life after VISTA, how to work with your members around the end of service transition. You can also watch other webinars from this series. We've done, I think we're on our 5th now, on that same page, the Webinars for Supervisors page, and there are also a lot of great tools and resources that are posted there as well. So this concludes the formal portion of our presentation today. When you close your WebEx window, you will be taken to an evaluation. Please fill out the evaluation and provide us some feedback on how we can make our webinars better for the future, or if you have ideas for additional topics, please share those via the webinar evaluation. So I want to thank everybody for being here today. Any additional questions that you might have, please go ahead and post those in the chat or in the Q&A. And I'll just wait a couple minutes. This concludes the formal portion of the webinar. I know some of you are running off to lunch and other meetings, and I hope you have a great day today. And thank you to everyone who's sending us wonderful messages in the chat. We appreciate you as well. Okay, so I'm not seeing any additional questions, so I think we're going to go ahead and end the webinar at this point. We hope to see you again June 17th for our next session on preparing for life after VISTA. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.